Good morning, Cumberland Elementary, fourth graders. How are you doing today? Today is Thursday, May 7th, and we're heading back into the city of Ember again. Last time we read, if you remember right, Lena got Poppy and met Dune down in the pipeworks, and they were on their way. They lowered the boat into the water, and were kind of being tipsy and turvy and not quite sure what they were going to get into. And then suddenly the current slowed. You guys know the current is the wave of the water, the fast or slow that the water is going. And suddenly the current slowed even more and the tunnel opened out. "We've come into a room." A room," said Lena. Far overhead arched a vaulted ceiling. Columns of rock hung down from it, and columns of rock rose from the water too, making long shadows that turned and mingled as the boat floated among them. They glimmered in the candlelight, pink and pale green and silver. Their strange, lumpy shapes looked like something soft that had frozen, like towers of mashed potatoes, Lena thought, that had hardened to stone. Now and then the boat bumped into one of these columns, and they found that they could use a paddle to knock themselves free again. In this way, they crossed the room to the other side, where again the passage narrowed and the current ran faster. Much, much faster. It was as if the boat were being pulled forward by a powerful hand. The water grew rough again, and splashes of spray put out their candles. Lena and Dune huddled in the bottom of the boat with Poppy between them, their arms clasped around her. They clenched their teeth and squeezed their eyes shut, and soon there was nothing in their minds but the roll and plunge of the boat, nothing in their bodies but the effort not to be thrown over. Once the sound of the river rose to a crashing, and the front of the boat tipped downward, and they were pitched about so violently that it seemed they were tumbling downstairs. But that lasted only for a few seconds, and then they were streaming onward as before. Lena lost track of time, but a while later, maybe a few minutes, maybe an hour, the current slowed. The candles they'd stuck in the boat had been knocked overboard, and so Dune lit new ones. They saw that they had come into another pool. There were no lumpy columns of rock here. Nothing interrupted the wide, flat surface of the water, which stretched out before them in the flickering light from their candles. The ceiling was smooth and only about 10 feet above their heads. The boat drifted, as if it had lost its sense of direction. Using a paddle to poke against the walls, Dune guided the boat around the edge of the pool. "I don't see where the river goes," said Dune. "Do you see anything?" "I don't see where the river goes either," said Lena, "unless it's there where it flows into that little itty-bitty gap." She pointed to a crack in the wall, only a few inches wide. "But the boat can't go in there," said Dune. "No," said Lena, "it's much too small." He pulled the boat forward. Their shadows moved with them along the wall. "Want to go home?" said Poppy. "We're almost there," Lena told her. "Well, we certainly can't go back the way we came," said Dune. "No." Lena dipped a hand in the water. It was so cold it sent an ache up her arm. Could this be the end?" asked Dune. His voice sounded flat in this closed-in space. "The end?" Lena felt a shiver run through her. "I mean, the end of the trip," Dune said. "Maybe we're supposed to get out over there." He pointed to a wide expanse of rock that sloped back into the darkness on one side of the pool. Everywhere else, the walls rose straight out of the water. He pulled the boat over to the rock slope. The boat scraped bottom here, and the water was shallow. "I'll get out and see if it goes anywhere," said Dune. "I want to be on solid ground anyway." Dune was holding Poppy and handed it to Lena. He stood up. Holding a candle, he put one foot over the edge of the boat and into the cold water, and he waded ashore. The way did not look promising. The ground sloped upward and the ceiling sloped downward. As farther he went back, he had to stoop. A few yards in, a tumbled heap of rocks blocked the way. He inched around them, turning sideways to squeeze through the narrow space, and crept forward, holding the candle out in front of him. "This goes nowhere," he thought. "We're trapped." A few steps farther along, he found he could stand up straight again, and a few steps beyond that, he turned a corner, and suddenly the candlelight shone on a wide path, with a high ceiling and a smooth floor. Dune gave a shout. "Here it is! Here it is!" he cried. "It's here! It's a path! It's here!" Lena's voice came from far away. She couldn't tell what she was saying. She made her way back toward the boat, and when it came in sight, he yelled again. "I found a path! It's a path!" Dune scrambled in and waded ashore, helping to carry Poppy. He set her down, and then he and Lena took hold of the boat and hauled it as far as they could up the slope of the rock. Poppy caught the excitement. She shouted gleefully, waving her fists like little clubs, and stomped around, glad to be on her feet again. She found a pebble and plunked it into the water, crowning happily at the splash it made. I want to go see this path. Go up that way, Lena told him, and around the pile of rocks. I'll stay here and take care of things in the boat. Dune went, taking another candle from the box in the boat. Lena sat Poppy down in a kind of a nook formed by a roundish boulder and a hollow in the wall. Don't move from here, she said. Then she pulled Dune's bundle from under the seat of the boat. It was damp but not soaked. Maybe the food inside would still be all right. She was hungry all of a sudden. She had no dinner, she remembered. It must be the middle of the night by now, or maybe even morning. She carried Dune's bundle ashore along with the boxes of candles and matches, and as she set them down, Dune came back. His eyes were glowing, the reflection of a tiny flame dancing in each one. That's it, he said. For sure, we've made it. Then his eyes shifted. What does Poppy have? He asked. Lena whipped around. In Poppy's hands was something dark and rectangular. It wasn't a stone. It was more like a packet of some kind. She was plucking and pulling at it. She lifted it to her mouth as if to tear it with her teeth, and Lena jumped to her feet. Stop! She yelled. Poppy, startled, dropped the packet and began to cry. It's all right. Never mind, Lena said, retrieving what Poppy had been about to chew on. Come on and have some dinner. Hush, hush, honey. We're going to have dinner. I'm sure you're just hungry. In the light of Dune's candle, with Poppy squirming in Lena's lap, they examined Poppy's find. The packet was wrapped in slippery, greenish material and bound up with a strap. It wasn't wrapped very well. It looked as if someone had bundled it up quickly. The material was loose and blotched with whitish mold. Lena edged the strap off carefully. It was partly rotten. On the end of it was a small, square buckle covered with rust. She folded back the wrapping, and Dune took a sharp breath. It's a book, he said. He moved his candle closer, and Lena opened the brown cover. The pages inside had faint blue lines across them, and someone had written along those lines in slanted block letters, which were not neat like the writing in a library book, but sprawling as if the writer had been in some kind of hurry. Dude ran his finger under the first line. It says, they tell us we leave? They tell us we leave tonight? He looked up and met Lena's eyes. Leave, said Lena. From where? From Ember, Dune asked. Could someone have come this way before us? Or was it someone leaving the other city? Dune looked down at the book again. He rifled through the pages. There were many of them. Let's save it, said Lena. We'll read it when we get to the new city. Dune nodded. It'll be easier for sure to see there. Lena wrapped up the book again and tied it securely into Dune's bundle. They sat on the rock shelf for a while, eating the food Dune had brought. The candles wedged in the boat still shone steadily, and their light was cozy like lamplight and made golden shapes on the still surface of the pond. Dune said, I saw the guards run after you, Lena. Tell me what happened. Lena did. And what about Poppy? What did you tell Mrs. Murdo? I told her the truth, Dune. At least I hope it's the truth. I caught up with her on the way home after the singing. She'd seen the posters and was terrified, but before she could ask questions, I just said she must give Poppy to me. I said I was taking her to safety because that's what I suddenly realized on the roof of the gathering hall, Dune. I'd been thinking before that I had to leave Poppy because she'd be safe with Mrs. Murdo. But when the lights went out, I suddenly knew. There is no safety in Ember. Not for long anyway, not for anyone. I just couldn't leave her behind. Whatever happens to us now, it's better than what's going to happen there. And did you explain that all to Mrs. Murdo? No, Lena said. I was in a terrible hurry, Dune, to get to the Pipeworks to meet you, and I knew I had to go a while. There were still crowds in the street, so it'd be harder for the guards to see me, and I just said I was taking Poppy to safety. Mrs. Murdo handed her over, but she sort of sputtered where and why, and I said, you'll know in a few days. It's all right. And then I just ran. So you gave her the note then, said Dune, the one for Clary? Oh, my goodness. Lena stared at him stricken. The message to Clary. She put her hand in her pocket and pulled out the crumpled piece of paper. Dune, I forgot all about it. I was thinking of just getting Poppy. I'm so sorry, and I just had to get to you, and I'm so sorry. So no one knows about the room full of boats? Lena just shook her head, her eyes wide open. How will we get back to tell them? We don't, said Dune. Dune, said Lena. If we told people right away, even just a few, if we hadn't decided to be grand and announce it at the singing, we... I know, said Dune, but we didn't, that's all. We didn't tell and no one knows. I did leave a message for my father, though. He told Lena about the pinning his last-minute message to the kiosk in Silverton Square. I said that we'd found the way out and that it was in the pipeworks, but it's not much help. Clary has the instructions, Lena said. She knows there's an egress. She might find it, right? Or she might not, said Dune. There was nothing to be done about it now, so they put the supplies back into Dune's pillowcase and got ready to go. Lena used Dune's rope to make a leash for Poppy. She tied one end around Poppy's waist and the other around her own. She filled her pockets with packets of matches, and Dune put all the remaining candles in the sack in case they arrived in the new city at night. He filled his water bottle with river water, lit a candle for himself and one for Lena, and thus equipped, they left the boat behind and crept up the rocky shelf to the path above. Next chapter, chapter 19, is called A World Full of Light. That's where we'll stop. See you tomorrow.